second term as a councillor in Ostend City Council, responsible for social policy, the economy, which includes work, employment, international development, and equality issues. Those are my areas that I follow up as a councillor. And then the question, like Pendo raised, is what are you going to the European Parliament to do? I mean, isn't there enough challenges in the Ostend City Council, where I'm currently serving? Yes, there are enough challenges, but you also realize that a good number of these challenges that you find at the local level actually have a more European dimension. And what works in one European country has the potential to work in another European country, but because there is the lack of political will, and maybe also the lack of the knowledge of what works elsewhere and how this could be standardized, is actually not there. And so people like me, who have actually taken interest beyond, our immediate environment, which is not surprising. At some point, I left Nigeria, where I was born, and decided that this is going to be home. So it's not surprising that the focus is actually broader than an average colleague at the council. So looking at all of this, and I will concentrate on job, for example, because that is one example that we have started using so far. Now, I find it totally unacceptable that a teacher who trained in Africa cannot even find a job as a cleaner in a school here in Belgium where he or she is supposed to be teaching. That is appalling. Meanwhile, you look at also medical doctors who train perhaps in Africa, in Afghanistan, or Romania, or wherever, who come here armed with skills, armed with knowledge, in their profession, yet when they apply to work in hospitals as doctor, they are actually sent back to school not to retrain as a doctor, but even as auxiliary nurse, and that will take the person 3 good years. Meanwhile, in places like the UK, all you need to do is to sit and pass an entry examination into your profession. If you pass the examination, you are admitted into the profession. Now, the key question is, why does it work in the UK, our next door neighbor, and why doesn't it work here in Belgium? Something must be wrong, and I can tell you that that thing that is wrong is not really so much of a big problem to sort out. What is lacking and what the big problem is the political will to get down to it and begin to standardize some of these practices that work elsewhere, but where, because they are not applied here, both the state is losing and the individual migrants themselves are losing. Now, I believe that I can go on and on and on with a number of similar examples, simply to accentuate the fact that problems have got to start getting the international look, the global focus, the global dimension that they deserve, because you can really have a number of solutions there.
Collins, may I interrupt you there? So you're talking about doctors who are coming here, who are trained elsewhere. How do we know? I mean, are you saying that they have to pass an exam, a medical exam? I mean, an exam to verify their qualifications? And you're giving the example of the UK. Now, I have another question. What about the language issue? How are you going to deal with the Belgian language issue? Because we have another problem which is not necessarily in the UK.
Well, I think the language, and I have to say this with strong emphasis. Learning the language is very, very important. You cannot basically do without it. What I do not accept is the insinuation that the majority of migrants who come here are so stupid that they are unable to learn the language, because that is not the case. The case is that when people do not see exactly where they are walking towards, when people are not given perspectives, they lose the motivation to actually learn that language in the way and manner that will be very beneficial to them. I tell you something. If a medical doctor comes here, and that medical doctor is told that you need to sit and pass an entry examination into your profession, and once you pass that examination, you will be admitted to practice your profession. You can be rest assured that the motivation to actually learn that language, because the examination is going to be start in Dutch, the motivation is going to be very, very strong, because the person knows that he or she is working towards something. And in other instances, it is not exactly that way. Now, I'm not trying to simplify a very complicated, issue, but I'm just trying to say that the lack of motivation, the lack of perspective, actually, dampen people's spirit to learn the language in the manner that they should, and that's a problem that needs to be looked at.
Okay, thank you, Collins. So you've talked about employment or jobs. What other issues are you championing?
Yes. As you know, I'm of the Green Party, so which means that I'm supposed to be as green as possible, and I think I'm learning to be. But I think that the Green Party that we signed up for is a Green Party that has started to pay equal attention to the issues of environment as much as it pays to the issue of social decay. Because while the climate is changing, I believe, and I believe that the Green Party is seeing it from that perspective as well, the social climate is changing as well. So you need people within the mainstream green movement who take green issues as seriously as they take social issues. In my first mandate as councillor, I did nothing other than social affairs. And social affairs also comes, job issues come there, where they say, okay, you have this as your target, but it's probably important for you to start here and then, find your way up to where you need to be. That requires, special processes and all of that. We dealt with all of those. Now, my heart also goes very much to issues around the youth, senior citizens, but also equality. The fact that the ethnic minorities, if there was ever a time when Belgium or Europe was a monoculture, I believe that time is dead and buried. Okay. There is no going back to the fact that it is becoming a multicultural society, and that has got to be managed in a way that it is productive both for the individual but also for the community.
Okay. So Collins, apart from doing all this politics, apart from all of this, you're also advisor to diaspora community. Now people sitting around here, maybe I could say they are diaspora, or we are diaspora from wherever we're coming from, but you're not from Belgium. Some of us, or some of you may be born here. But in this experience, I mean, you have this experience as well, and now you're going into politics. Now, what kind of advice do you actually give to the people of diaspora, and how can the people of diaspora, so to speak, make use of some of this, or your experience, in order for us to move on? How can that experience, or how can you use the people of diaspora, how can you learn from your experience in order to grow? Because you've been advising your government, so what is it that you're telling your government about the diaspora? How can the diaspora develop? I know you guys are here, you're in politics. What about the rest of the people? What can they do?
Yeah. Thank you. That's a very pertinent question. I think what we as diaspora bring to the African table is the fact that we live and work in places where things work better. Okay? Now, we have been impacted by the practices, the policies, and the culture of our host countries. We have, acquired some education. We have, taken along with us some values that are different from what, we used to have when we lived in Africa. And I believe that our network is growing as well, on the strength of our residents here in the diaspora. Now, one major problem is that because of the state of things back in Africa, a good number of us in diaspora have literally hung up on our countries because the challenges are huge, and the question usually is, where do I start from? Now, what I have been doing in the last 10 years, I believe, is actually pointing the government of my country, but also a number of other African countries, to some necessary changes that need to be made in laws and policies and practices back in Africa that will be more receptive to the diaspora community when they come back. Something as simple as, making investment more, favorable, more interesting for them, which is not necessarily asking you to bake a special bread for the diaspora, but because it makes all the sense in the world to provide incentives, to people who are keen to invest. And then in terms of employment back in Africa, I believe that some of us possess both the network, the skills, and the knowledge to serve in different capacities in African government, but also in the private sector. And I believe that that is happening more and more. In the specific case of Nigeria, the diaspora community actually developed the Global Database for Nigerians in Diaspora, which is a database of Nigerian professionals throughout the world, which is made available to the government of Nigeria, the private sector, but also the development partners. With that, they are able to assess the skills of Nigerians living outside Nigeria who are willing, but also able to go back home to serve, in the development of the country. There is no fancy way of saying it. Racism is real, is here with us, and it will probably stay for a very long time if things continue in the way and manner they are at the moment. Now, what would I change? First and foremost, I will embark on strong sensitization activities. Okay? I will recommend actions and activities, projects and programs that bring different communities together so that people interact more, get to know each other better. Because I know from experience that through interaction, a lot of the stereotyping and a lot of the prejudice actually go away, but of course not completely. Another thing, as European legislator, that I will not hesitate to look into very, very seriously is strengthening the anti-racism law. I believe there are quite a number of loopholes in the law that allow people get away with racist behaviors and attitude. That has got to be looked into. That has got to be blocked, and then the application of the law in cases where people are found wanting, have got to be more stringent than they are at the moment. I believe that by the time some of these things are applied in this manner, we may succeed in at least reducing the incidence of racism. But I think it's important for you to prepare your mind that racism may probably never go away, but at least a lot can be done to bring it down to a more tolerable level. Thank you.
So you talked about sensitization and improving interaction. How would you do that? Aren't we interacting already? We're schooling here, we're working here, we're going to the shops here. So what's missing?
Well, one of the things that was missing that we luckily have now is Sema Top Show. So, and like you told us at the beginning, Tema is Swahili, right? That stands for to talk. It's good to talk, and let's start from there. Talking more, interacting more, I believe we go a long way. I mean, outside the structured environment, in more informal manners. Who is my next door neighbor? I have a very, very short story, if you'll allow me. Somebody moved into my neighborhood, years back, I believe 10, 15 years ago. I went, across the street, it's a square. I was living on the other side, so I just went over to welcome them. You're welcome to the square. I mean, the way I was looked at, it's like, who wants to know? And then, I just went, I said, well, where I come from, this is normal. It's natural to simply welcome, new people, when they move into your neighborhood. And it can even be more robust than I am doing. I'm only just giving a handshake. I haven't even brought you jollof rice or pounded yam and those sorts of things. So just to say that informal interaction can help a great deal. I understand that there used to be a time in this society, in this European society, when that used to be the case, years back. Well, what I'm saying is, let's get back to business, because those things, are needed and they help.
Thank you so much. So I will start with the gentleman at the corner, and then Bob. Ask your questions.
My question is, let me make it clear again. Economically, for instance, we always talk about cleaner energy, clean energy. How do you balance clean energy with the economy? With regards to, for instance, you see China is progressing because they have refused, or they are not doing exactly what the Europeans are doing, and they're using what they call it again. They're using fuel, petrol, and the rest. They are not changing to cleaner energy. But my question is, how can you people at the Greens balance the economy of Africa, for instance, with regards to the use of cleaner energy in Europe, since we import oil from Africa?
Okay, so Colin, would you like to take that first?
Well, it does look to me like Bernard is making the insinuation that because the production of cleaner energy is very, very expensive, that the economy will be difficult to balance, right?
Yes.
Good. And he wants to know, in that case, how the Green Party is approaching that. Well, our point of departure is that the growth that we need has to be people-centered. We are not interested in very, very huge growth that will endanger the lives of those individuals for whom the growth is made. Now, we do not want a situation where you grow in such huge form, and then finally, I'm trying to break this down in our everyday language without going technical. And then you continue to deplete the environment such that at some point, our great-grandchildren will not have a clean environment to live in. Even now, we are already beginning to feel the impact of the pollution, the instances of lung infection and all whatnot is going higher. Now, having said that, I want to say that yes, the production of clean energy is expensive, but it is also affordable. There are a number of indirect areas where savings could be made. And let us begin, for example, in the creation of tax haven for people, the richest in the society, where the right taxes are not being paid by them, yet the man on the street, the everyday man who goes to work on daily basis, before his or her salary gets to his or her hand, it has the taxes have been already subtracted. So they pay the right thing. But the person who earns more, because that person is self-employed and there are a number of loopholes, the profits made are carted away somewhere and not being catered for. And what you and I should actually consider a very, very big insult to our intelligence is the fact that people are even talking of fiscal amnesty, where they say, okay, all the money that you've carted away and kept somewhere out of the reach of the European taxman, keep it where it is, no problem. Let us wipe the plate, the clean, and start afresh. No, it just doesn't work that way, because if such funds are repatriated back to where they were made, I believe there will be enough funds to finance the clean energy, which ultimately is going to be in the best interest of everyone. So I will leave it at that for now and hope that your question has been answered. Thank you.
Collins, thank you very much. But as a follow-up to something you said, you talked about taxing the rich. I suppose it's in reference to Europe. I think you also asked something about Africa. I don't know, the link? Yes. Exactly. Because the oil is coming there. So, but I have another question. We are taxing the rich. Okay, maybe that's one proposal you're putting on the table. But I have a question. How about the large polluting industries? Why are they having a free ride? Or are they not?
Well, our principle as a Green Party is that he who pollutes should pay for the cost of cleaning up the pollution. It's as simple as that. Now, what that essentially means is that the big industries should begin to think of investing more in technology that is cleaner, that is greener, and better for the economy. It is, and this is not rocket science, okay? And I believe this is, as simple as ABC. Now, don't get me wrong, I am not naive, and just for the sake of the information, my initial educational orientation was economics, okay? And then, because the social aspect of the economy interested me so much, I kind of branched off to investigate the social economy in more depth. So, I think I understand the undercurrents so much, and I believe that what is at the heart of the issue here is greed, okay? Once the big men are able to do away with the tendency to be greedy and consider fairness in the best interest of everybody, I believe that they will make the right investment in clean technology, and by doing so, I believe that the world will be better off for that.
In this forum where the ACP and the EU meet, there are areas of divergences. And one area has been on sexual orientation, for example. Cultural diversity. The issue of racism has been mentioned. I've noticed that in identifying issues that are of concern, the European side has identified racism as one of the issues that should be a point of discussion in the next report, where they'll come up with a report and recommendations. So there is recommendations also on the European side that racism is there, not just in Europe, but also in ACP countries, depending on how you look at it. It is there, but it needs to be addressed, and we have to address issues of cultural diversity. But the question I want to ask is, how are you going to try and create a balance between the so-called European values that address issues like sexual orientation differently from how the Africa, Caribbean, and Pacific group of states in general, not specifically, but in general, look at this issue? And of course, this is just one example. There could be other examples where I think the issue of balance between what you be perceived to be presenting, being from African origin, and what you'll be able to do, being members of parliament. I think that's a question I want to pose to the two speakers. Thank you.
You've asked a very, very pertinent question, and I'm very, very pleased with the kind words with which you have described the Green Party. You've not invented any of them. You know, that's who we are, and we are even getting better. On the issue of creating a balance on cultural issues, there are quite a lot that can be said. But you see, like the word Sema, which is to talk, it is always good to talk, because by talking, you will begin to, you know, bridge some of the gaps that you have. But one thing must stand central as far as I am concerned as an individual Green member, and I believe that the party shares that view with me. And that thing is choice. Be it on the issue of homosexual marriage, that is same-sex marriage, or be it on the issue of legalization of polygamy in Africa, where a man is allowed to marry, you know, more than one wife. Now, when we discuss such issues, as an African, but also one that likes to see himself as being broad-minded, I would say that those who have issues with the polygamy law in some African countries should realize that such law has not made polygamy compulsory. The key thing there is that there is a choice. You can either choose to marry more than one wife, or choose to stick with one wife, which, like some people would like to say, is even enough headache. Okay? So, now, for some of us who feel that one wife is more than enough, I believe that the task ahead of us is to go out there and propagate that idea, that view, you know, to sensitize other people to say, listen, that law, you know, allowing you to marry more than one wife is there, but you don't have to do that. Okay? So I will leave that one on that. And then the issue of, you know, homosexuality. Well, as an African who lives here and has been, you know, encountered the issues of discrimination, I believe that I can see eye to eye with individuals, you know, who choose to go into a relationship with somebody of the same sex and is being discriminated upon. being from a highly, Christian country, Nigeria, at some point I believe was, voted, one of the most Christian countries, religious countries in the world. I can also see from the perspective of those who believe that this is an abomination. But ultimately, the word choice has to be the thing that we should place at the center of the entire debate. So I will not sit here and tell you that I do not want, to hear anything about same-sex marriage. I would rather be telling you that there is a choice. Nobody is being forced by the law to get into same-sex marriage if that isn't what you want. And then lastly, and I believe that was something you touched, in passing, trade relations between Africa and Europe. This is probably going to be spectacular for a Green Party person, but I can tell you that where I stand on the issue is that fair trade policies should be at the center of the relationship between Europe and Africa. The right prices being paid for the right goods and services. Africa should not depend on aid from Europe to be able to survive. The relationship should be built not on aid, but on trade. Once that happens, I believe that in the long run, European taxpayers will feel happier because their money stays with them. It no longer goes to Africa. And Africans will be happier with the level of profit coming out of the fair business transactions conducted between them and Africa. That way, everybody is happy. I know it's a long run, but that's where I stand on that. Thank you.